What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from the 10-7 MMA channel. If you guys did not know, I'm actually in Vegas, and I actually went to UFC 317. It was a bit of a last-minute decision. I don't think too many people know that because I did make a video about it earlier today, but it's gotten 16 views, and so my assumption is most people are unaware. But nevertheless, I went. It was amazing, and I was really on the fence about going, but I'm so glad I did. I actually had pretty awesome seats on the floor, so it was a really, really fun environment, and it was actually my first time at a UFC event, which is crazy because you guys might think, well, I have a YouTube channel about it. I'm such a fan. Of course, I must go regularly, but that is actually not the case. I love watching the fights on TV, but I happened to be in Vegas, decided to do it, and it was an incredible experience, as you guys can now imagine. So I wanted to take the time in my hotel room. I wanted to take the time to quickly run through the card because I think it was phenomenal from top to bottom. I'm curious to see what other people think and what other people are saying, but yeah, it was wild, and the final fight really left me speechless. So let's start at the top here. We're going to start with the first fight, Peyton Talbott versus Felipe Lima. Now, this fight was actually one of my favorite fights of the night, and part of the reason why is because I've been a really big fan of Peyton Talbott, not only his fighting style, but I like his personality. I love his interviews. I think he's a deep, introspective, intelligent guy, and I think he's got tremendous talent. But what was so incredible about this fight is that obvious weakness that was exposed in his last fight, his last loss. He worked on that weakness, and man, he made some strides. And I mean, in fact, Lima tried to take him down multiple times, tried to smother him, and every time he got out from underneath, he reversed the position. He got on top and laid down just all sorts of great striking, really good ground and pound. And it's so cool to see those types of improvements take place in such a short period of time. And even Peyton Talbott himself said that after his last loss, he wanted to become a more well-rounded fighter, and it seems like he achieved that in a very short time period. So that speaks to his work ethic, his grit, his desire. And I think when you combine that all with his already high level of talent, I think the sky's the limit for this guy. I thought he gave a great speech afterwards. I'm blanking on who he called out. Yanez, I believe. And I think he said after Yanez comes back from his injury, he would like that fight. We'll see what the UFC gives him. But what's truly spectacular about this victory is I think a lot of folks were perplexed as to why he got such a tough fight. Somebody who was on a massive win streak. I think a 14-fight win streak, if I'm not mistaken. At least his record was 14-1, something like that. But it was a very, very difficult fight. But the upside is everybody knew it was a difficult fight. In fact, Peyton Talbott was predicted to lose this fight, even by the great John Morgan, who was on our show on Friday. But he got the victory, and he showed up and showed out in impressive fashion. And I can't imagine what this is going to do for his stock. It's got to be rising so high. And this is so great for UFC fans like me and the sport as a whole to have somebody this electric, this magnetic, start to really dominate and take over and show the versatility in the game, because that means that they can have a real legitimate run at the title. So that was really, really cool. Now moving on to the next fight, Beneil Dariush, as I predicted. Well, I had some definite misses on this fight card, but I picked Beneil Dariush to win. Part of the reason why was because Beneil Dariush was alluding to retiring if the fight did not go his way. So I just thought he would pull out all the stops, and he did. The second round I thought was very dominant, but I think he put the pedal to the metal a little bit too hard, and that's why he burnt himself out, and he looked visibly exhausted in round 3, but he would not give up. He still kept throwing heavy kicks. He kept coming forward. He was relentless, almost like a zombie at times. And I was worried for him, but I think because he's such a well-rounded fighter, despite the fact that he was exhausted, Moicano just couldn't get anything going, and it was really, really cool. And in typical Beneil Dariush fashion, I think I actually had to get up and go to the bathroom when he was having his speech after the fact, but I asked the people next to me when I came back, and they said he didn't call anybody out. He was just gracious, as he always is in victory, and it's great. I'm happy, fan of both guys. I'm a fan of Money Moicano and Beneil Dariush, but that was who I was rooting for because I don't want him to retire. I don't think Money Moicano is going anywhere. So congrats to Beneil Dariush. Amazing to see him back in the win column, and he will still be sticking around in the lightweight division, which I think is great for the lightweight division. Moving on to fight number 3. Joshua Van, I got to admit, I didn't know too much about him coming into this fight. I was thinking Brandon Royval was going to get it done, especially with the chip on his shoulder saying he's the most disrespected fighter in the UFC. And on top of that, Joshua Van came in on 3 weeks' notice, which I forgot. I remember now after they were saying it in the post-fight speech that he was a late replacement for Manel Kopp, who had some injury, and he came in. And on top of it, this guy's only been training for 5 years, which is bonkers to me. But he came in and it was just incredible because Royval had a pretty substantial reach advantage. At least it looked like he definitely had a height advantage. It looked like he had a pretty substantial reach advantage, but they were just both sticking to boxing. There were times when Royval was mixing it up with some kicks. I think maybe he should have done more of that. I don't know. I mean, that's my novice opinion, but it seemed like that would have helped him out because the thing is with Joshua Van, he was so dang fast. When he was able to get inside, he was lighting up Royval with these like 6 or 7 punch combos. It was crazy, getting some good body work in. And then, of course, that incredible third round, it gave me goosebumps. The entire crowd, everybody around me was on their feet when he finally dropped Brandon Royval and almost got the finish. That was insane. And then on top of it, he comes out and said he had his big toe was broken 3 weeks ago. And he still fought. And guys might say it's just a broken toe, this and that. But remember, Conor McGregor pulled out of a fight for a broken pinky toe. So you can imagine the big toe is that much more essential to maintaining balance, throwing kicks, even footwork involving boxing. So for him to overcome all of that, come in as a short notice replacement and show up and show out in the way he did was just absolutely incredible. And he even got to go in the cage and square off with Pantoja. And it looks like that's going to be the next fight, which is very exciting. Just a quick note on that matchup. I don't know what Joshua Van's ground game is like, but he said of his own admission, he's only been training for 5 years. I'm curious to see the fight. I like Joshua Van. He's awesome. I have a strong feeling that Pantoja is going to have a massive advantage in the grappling department, kind of like he did against Kai Kara France. So I don't know how that's going to go, but I'm excited to see it either way. And if Pantoja can get another title defense, he's just moving closer and closer to the top of the pound for pound rankings. Even Joe Rogan said at the end of the fight, yeah, he's way too low in the pound for pound rankings and he needs to be near the top. So anyways, back to Joshua Van, legendary performance from Houston. What a G. And yeah, man, he's a fun guy. Definitely can't wait to see his interview tomorrow on Ariel Show or wherever he goes. Looking forward to that and looking forward to get to know about Joshua Van much more so, as he's definitely become shot up as one of my favorite fighters to watch. All right, moving on to the co-main. Pantoja, of course, cruises to victory here, and he pretty much dominated Kai Kara France, in my opinion. Kai Kara just couldn't get away from him. Pantoja had him locked up in the first round, the backpack, almost like Aljo used to do to people, and he just could not escape. I think he was totally outclassed on the ground, and as a result, he couldn't get his boxing going, and I think he was even a bit hesitant at times to get too close, and then he kept just getting taken down over and over and had pretty much no answer to Pantoja's pressure. He just completely smothered him, and then I think there just came a point where he couldn't fend off the submissions anymore. Pantoja got the classic rear naked choke, choked him out. Kai Kara France tried to fight it off, tried to hang tough. I thought he was going to go to sleep. Actually, everybody around me thought he was going to go to sleep, but he didn't. He eventually tapped, and Pantoja holds on to that title, which was pretty cool. There were times in the fight where the crowd was booing, and that always annoys me when they're in grappling exchanges. Like, they're doing work. And I thought Pantoja had a really smart strategy at the beginning, especially when there was basically no perspiration. Everybody was dry. And Pantoja just had him in that lock, tiring him out, landing some ground and pound, but not a lot. And I think that's probably why people were booing. But I thought the strategy made a ton of sense. That being said, there were points later on in the fight where I think the crowd, it really slowed down the momentum of the entire evening, but then it all got shot back up when he got that submission. The crowd got on their feet, cheered for Pantoja, and yeah, I think he's just becoming a bigger and bigger star. I did think Kai Kara France mistakenly was going to be able to land that knockout, just because I think that knockout power is so rare in the flyweight division, and I thought it might catch him off guard. I was completely wrong, and as Joe Rogan said, Pantoja showed a very well-rounded game, so major props to him. And that's how it goes. But now we move on to the final fight. And I want to talk about not only what happened, but just the entire lead up, and also take a moment to talk about the production that the UFC puts on in these shows. So as I mentioned, this is my first time going to a UFC event. being there in person. And I wanted to get a really good experience. That's why I ended up going for floor seats. The entire show is done so well, and I feel like can specifically say this with some authority as being a part of other fight promotions, going to other smaller events. Even I've been to a PFL event before as well. It's just like the way the UFC does it, everything with the sound effects, with the lights, with the way they dim the lights. And then as soon as the round ends, everything brightens up. And top to bottom, it's just one of the most incredibly produced shows, period, that I've ever experienced. Just no lulls, no downtime, not even ever a moment to be bored. So it was absolutely fantastic. Now this leads into the walkouts of Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira. As they're making their walkouts, they had their songs blasting. Crowd was going mental for Oliveira. People love Charles Oliveira. No surprise, but the vast majority of the audience was cheering for Charles. And I remember thinking, dude, this is like that popularity that Ilia can steal if he gets an emphatic win. I think that's exactly like this could not have been better. I mean, if he would have fought Islam and got the victory over him, I guess, right? In that way, just because Islam, I think, is a bigger star. Actually, maybe that's debatable. I don't know. Charles Oliveira is a massive star. But Charles Oliveira is so beloved, and people are so impressed with his skill set and how well-rounded he is that I think the way it unfolded, man, Ilia is literally a complete superstar now. He called it just like Conor did back in the day. He won it. So let's talk about the fight. I mean, it was short, but let's talk about it. We had Charles come forward just like Ilia predicted, but they went to the ground. I think that's the coolest part about the fight, is that it wasn't just all on the feet and a quick knockout. They actually did go to the ground, and Ilia was not afraid. There was a moment where I thought Charles might get a sneaky submission, maybe a heel hook. And again, I'm not a jiu-jitsu expert. Muay Thai is what I practice, but it seemed like there was a moment where that was a possibility. But Ilia got out of there, and I think to his credit, he has a massive grappling and jiu-jitsu background. That's how he came up in the game. Striking came to him later. So he was not afraid to go down there, got out of it, no problem. There was even a moment where Oliveira wasn't wanting to get back up, and eventually the ref stood him up. And then shortly after that, they just came, they were banging, and that perfect, I think it was a right hook, if I'm not mistaken, right followed up by a left, but it was just the most picture perfect hook that landed, and you can see the entire face, just like the chin just caught it right here, boom, and it was like vibration almost. You could see it go throughout his whole face and lights out. Then he caught him again with a left shot, and then he dropped to the ground, got two more shots on the ground, unfortunately, as Mark Goddard was rushing in to try and stop the fight. And I think he did a pretty good job in getting there. He did a great job. I mean, I don't think you could do much better. It was I think nobody wanted to see Charles take those last two shots, but what are you going to do? It was just so quick. It happened so fast, and that was that. And Ilia, dude, I'm telling you, a super duper star is born. And I thought also the way that he handled the victory, the amount of respect that he showed Charles Oliveira was perfect, because I think people could have been upset if he would have, and he's not going to do that. Why would he go negative and go like nasty against Charles Oliveira? He's awesome. He's shown him nothing but, they showed nothing but respect to each other. So I think he got the victory in the absolute best way. And then to top it off, I've been saying the whole time, the next fight I want to see is Ilia versus Paddy Pimblett. Two superstars. There's bad blood. It's a real beef. But Ilia's been saying, I don't think it should be Ilia. It's probably he needs to fight one more person. I was so bummed because I'm like, this is perfect. Why even risk Paddy going in and losing to somebody? If Ilia wins, they got to do it. They got to do it. And it looks like they're doing it. He was talking, and dude, Ilia talks such perfect smack to both Paddy and to Armin when they're in the audience. I loved every bit of it. I thought he absolutely crushed it. And then I loved how he basically no-sold Armin and called Paddy into the, I'm sure Armin was livid. I'm sure he was absolutely livid, and I understand that because he was backup fighter. And I think there might even be an agreement that, hey, if you make weight as backup fighter, you're getting the next title shot. And this, I mean, nothing is guaranteed in this sport unless it's in writing, right? So with Paddy going in there and them talking smack back and forth and then the shove at the end, I mean, I just don't see how it's not going to be Paddy versus Ilia next. Call me crazy, but it's just too good. It's too perfect. It's a mega fight. It's a super, they have to do it. They have to do it. So all in all, incredible card for people that were talking negatively about it. It just couldn't have been better. and the aftermath was incredible, and what's to come is incredible. So I'm just over the moon. I'm so happy that I decided to pull the trigger and actually go to the fight and have those incredible seats. I'll be uploading footage from my seats later this week. You guys can check it out and see kind of what I got to see from my vantage point. But yeah, it was so cool. Also, Steve will do it. That dude from the Doug Boys walked right past me because it was like everybody, was kind of down in that area. So that was kind of cool. I didn't see any other. I was really hoping we were going to be sitting by some UFC fighters, and that would have been a trip. But I couldn't see any in my section, at least not nearby in an area where I could see anyone. But that is that. That is my recap of UFC 317. Legendary show, incredible. And Ilia is the absolute legend, absolute star of the show. I know that everybody's going crazy about the Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval fight, and it was amazing. Don't get me wrong, but part of what makes a fight incredible is the stakes, and we have to be honest about that. And as amazing as that back and forth was, and the stakes were high. I mean, don't get me wrong. Joshua Van has now gotten a title shot off of that fight, but Ilia just got double champ status, and he's now exploded into a superstar, and he beat a former champ in Charles Oliveira, one of the most dangerous fighters, probably now that Islam's gone. Maybe the second most dangerous fighter after Arman. Oh, who knows? Maybe the most dangerous. I don't know. He's up there. But he got a victory over Charles Oliveira, such a fan favorite in such a crazy way. Yeah, it wasn't a 5-round war, but it was a first-round knockout and something he called absolutely incredible. So to me, that was the most amazing performance of the night. Massive congrats. Can't wait to see what's next. That's all I got. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Did you guys also love the show? Did it turn out the way you predicted with these fights? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm going to bed. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.